Welcome to the Inspiration North podcast, inspiring stories from inspirational people and how they found their passion, their true north. I'm James Eves.
And I'm Michelle Minikin, and this is the Inspiration North podcast.
Today's episode, listen to the whispers in your heart with Lisa Vescio. We talk about how having a profession as a nurse enables you to travel the world, seeing gaps in the level of care and creating a solution to meet patients' needs, and you can create a wonderful life after burnout.
Lisa is a qualified mental health professional with over 18 years of experience in mental health and 12 years as a company founder and managing director. As the director doctor, she now works with senior leaders and business owners, helping them to unlock the triggers and causes of stress so they can find a life balance that works for them. A skilled and inspiring coach, Lisa has a lifelong passion for bringing out the best in people.
So Lisa, as I understand it, you grew up, is it in Ashington?
Yes, I grew up in Ashington, yes.
So take us back to childhood.
So I grew up in Ashington, which is a very well-known mining village in the northeast. Went through normal nursery school, first school, middle school, high school. When I was very young, about the age of 3 or 4, my parents split up and moved in with my stepfather, who was a miner. So growing up, it was quite a difficult time because we went through the mining strikes, and we didn't have a lot of money, we didn't have a lot of freedom, we were pretty restricted in our lives. My stepfather was known as a scab because he was one of the first people to go back to work because he had 2 families to feed. So we were basically bullied at school, or specifically my brothers weren't allowed to sit in front of the windows because we might get a brick through the window. We had rubbish poured in the garden, lots of horrible things. So yeah, it's quite a tough start, but it kind of gives you a bit of a backbone, or I feel looking back that it did. And I feel like that was quite a turning point for me in my life, because I made the decision that wasn't a lifestyle that I wanted to live, and I needed to cut some kind of path for me that meant that I would have security in life. I wouldn't be living in poverty or have to go through the experiences that I did as a child. Yeah, so continued, as I say, through normal schooling. People used to say I was a good carer, I was always helping people, that type of thing.
Wasn't your mum and your granny good at caring as well?
Yeah, mum and gran were in the caring profession, so back then you didn't really know what the options were in the big wide world, what you could really do. So I was naturally drawn to nursing. Kind of thought, well, it's a stable career. You can always, travel if you're a nurse. There's lots of options, lots of doors that can open from that. So that was the career direction that I chose. I did some placements in the general hospitals, and I didn't like it at all. I didn't like the feeling of being stuck inside in these white buildings with the smells of medicines and things. And I did a placement in mental health, a local mental health hospital. And I really enjoyed it. I got lots of good feedback. I was so intrigued about how the mind worked and what was going on with people. And I really felt that was what I was meant to be doing. So I continued on that pathway. And then when I qualified, or shortly before I qualified, I kind of felt that as a nurse, you're restricted in the kind of things you can do for people. There's lots of paperwork, there's lots of guidelines, there's lots of bureaucracy things that you need to follow, but actually sitting down with the patients and doing really good work was actually quite difficult. I was more, and I used to say I feel more like a glorified prison officer than actually a mental health nurse.
Yeah. You don't have enough time really with the patient to
feel
like
you're
helping them.
And I never felt they were actually being treated in a therapeutic way. A way of managing them was basically putting them on observations, locking them in a room, or restricting them on one-to-ones and things like that. And I could see some reason behind it, but actually didn't feel like we were getting to the core of the problem. And while there were lots of good people around and different therapists doing good work, I couldn't really spend the time I think that they would like to either, to do really good intensive work with the patients. So I decided 6 months into qualifying that I was going to try working in hospitals in a different part of the world.
So what did you look at, or where did you decide to go?
Well, there was an advert in the back of a nursing magazine saying, would you like to nurse in the sun? So I thought, yeah.
Yes, and yes.
Yes, please. So I looked at it some more, and it was the opportunity to join an agency and go and work in Australia.
Nice.
So I filled in the application, went through the process and just did it, really. I sold my house, lock, stock and barrel, and off I went.
Was there any, I mean, it sounds really exciting, but we often talk to people about how did your kind of close circle react to that? Friends, family? It's like, oh, you're going to the other side of the world. What were the sort of reactions you'd get?
It's hard to think now, looking back, but coming from Ashington, it wasn't really the thing you did. A really good friend of mine did something a year or two before she went to Africa. But apart from her, I didn't actually know many people that left and went travelling. So I suppose it was seen as quite an unusual thing to do. But I was supported. And that's obviously good. They could see the opportunities for doing that. Obviously, my mum was devastated. She didn't want me to disappear for a year, but I did, yeah.
Where did you end up then in North?
Oh, I worked in Queensland. I worked in Sydney. I worked in Alice Springs, which was a very interesting experience. Not very pleasant, I have to say, from the mental health hospital side of things. So that didn't last very long. And when I was doing that, actually, a friend of mine rang and said, Lise, we need some help in a ski resort. Do you want to come down? I was like, yep, count me in. So actually, this is a funny bit. I basically handed my notice in, and within a couple of days, got on the plane, got on the bus, and ended up in the snowy mountains in just outside of Melbourne. So I landed in the snow with sand on my shoes.
Nice.
And did that for quite a few months. Actually, it was quite fun. It was time out from nursing and just let my hair down and enjoy the crack. Really, it was saved some money for my trip home.
And it might sound a stupid question, but did you see similar problems mental health wise?
I did, yes, and that was what the good thing I got out of having that experience was that actually, even at the other side of the world, there were the same issues, the same similar systems and processes, and it really made me think: is this what I want to do? I felt I should be doing it. I felt that was a big part of who I am, but I was really confused because I didn't know what else I could do.
So then if you've got a bit of reflection time in the ski resort, we all have a bit of snow and après-ski. And so was that helpful then to try and figure out what am I going to do next? I'm going to go back to the UK. Am I going to change direction? Did that help at all?
Well, I kind of decided that if I was going to be a nurse, I'd be a nurse in the sun rather than in the cold. So, and then I would make a decision from there. So basically I was on a 1-year visa. So I finished that. Travelled a bit more around Thailand, different things, and came home, and the plan was to apply for a new visa. I was offered opportunity in a particular hospital in Queensland, so I could have gone back to that, but then I arrived home and was confused even more because you've gone through quite a big experience of being away in a new country in a different life, and then come back to the UK and you think, yeah, I'm going to go straight back, but it didn't quite work like that. And I felt very lost. I think that was the feeling that comes to mind.
Yeah, it's kind of, you wonder what to do, don't you? Like, I've had this great experience, but I'm not sure about it. I don't know if I want to be back in the UK. I felt the same in moving around to different countries, and you can get into a trap of, I'll try somewhere new and keep moving. And then it's like, well, don't feel like I'm quite at home yet. And then sometimes it takes actually coming back to the UK to think, well, actually, I feel quite good here. But
it's home, isn't it? It's where your roots are. So,
So what did you do next then? If you were not sure about, do I go back to Australia?
My mum was living in Norwich when I came back. She had moved for other reasons, and she said, well, why don't you come down here, join an agency and see how you feel in Norwich? Because I just didn't feel like I slotted back into the northeast when I came back. So I thought, well, why not? So after a little bit of time doing bits and bobs in nursing homes in the northeast, I went down to Norwich. And I joined an agency down there. I didn't really like what I was doing. I wanted to belong somewhere, not just do agency work, and I didn't really want to go back to the type of nursing I was doing. So I kind of scouted around on the internet, and I saw this independent mental health hospital was advertising for new staff. It was quite new at the time. And they were promoting holistic ways of treating people. It looked like a really lovely environment, completely different to your traditional units. And I thought, oh, this actually seems like something that aligns with what I am about. So I applied, and I got offered a job there. So I decided to stay in Norwich and ground myself and make a life for myself there until, see how things go. So that was my next step, really.
What was sort of different about that setup then, outside of your traditional mental health care?
There was just a different philosophy around how patients should be treated. It was more bespoke. There were a lot more things going on, and I think you quickly notice that independent hospitals they have more flexibility and freedom to make changes quickly and to put things in place, whereas traditional services are very restricted to processes and policies that are standardized throughout the industry. So I think it was the flexibility and the openness of what you were able to do there. And because it was very new, I had the opportunity to be part of growing and developing that, and I quite quickly felt I took ownership of the unit I was working on. And I progressed quite quickly through to being a charge nurse and then a unit manager, and helped develop policies and procedures and different things.
What would be sort of some of the conditions that you come across that would require care?
There was lots of chronically ill people, so there would be people with schizophrenia, people with personality disorders, bipolar. And there's some behavioural issues, but mostly it was the chronic mental health stuff, which were kind of outside diagnoses that were easy to manage in traditional units, so they needed that little bit more, something different. So yeah, it was quite chronically ill people.
So what did you do next?
Well, I could see gaps in the in what we were providing. Not that they weren't doing what needed to be done, but I suppose I should reframe that, not gaps, but areas where we could improve and do new things. And there was an old building on this grounds which I identified would be good to do a female-only unit in, because I felt that although we were doing really good work with the patients in a mixed environment, it wasn't always the most helpful, because a lot of the women had gone through abuse and different things. So being vulnerable in a mixed ward with challenging men I didn't feel appropriate. And there's also a big government push at the time to have single sex units. So I created a business plan, gave that to my manager at the time, and it was a bespoke unit for women, and it was read with interest. They came back and said they would be interested in doing it, but it would be with more patients and less staff. It wouldn't be to the numbers that I had proposed, and I didn't want to be part of that, because I felt like if I'm going to do something and it's something I've got my name to, it needs to be done in the way that I feel would be the right thing. And it didn't actually transpire, it didn't go ahead.
Because did they want you to be sort of a major, what's the word I'm looking for, like the piston in the project, or is that?
Well, I don't know if they wanted to be, but I did. It was my idea. I kind of had this real strong feeling that was something that was needed, and I wanted to be part of creating it. So, to cut a long story short, basically, there's lots of things going on, lots of politics, and I basically decided that it was something I would still like to do, and if I couldn't do it for that company, it was do it myself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Didn't actually think of how, just this is what I wanted to do.
So did you stay for much longer? Because obviously that's a turning point of things aren't progressing as I want them to progress. This new unit isn't going ahead, and I don't feel like I'm going to be making the difference. A bit like the earlier experiences in nursing, wasn't it? You sort of say, I don't feel like we're really doing care in the best way possible. So was there another period of reflection there, or did you sort of make a move to jump and pivot again?
I think at the time I was very unsettled anyway, because I had initially planned on going back to Australia, and I was encouraged to stay. So I decided at that point, well, if they're not going to do it, then I need to make a decision on what I wanted to do. And so I spoke to a good friend of mine who was also a senior manager there about what I was thinking, and asked if he would be interested in coming along and doing it with me. A bit controversial really, but yeah, we both were aligned in our visions, so it made sense. And he was like, really? Are you serious? And I was like, yeah, why not?
What's the worst that can happen?
It was quite frowned upon by the company we were working for, because they didn't actually know that was a plan until we actually got caught doing the business plan and printing it out. That didn't go down very well. So we left that organisation and pursued the new project, really.
That was still down in Norwich?
Still down in Norwich, yeah.
And what were the next steps then in looking at this new
Well,
project?
it was trying to find properties really and investments. And interestingly, I opened a paper, because back then you weren't looking on the internet, and there was this advert in the property part with a building. It said, do you fancy a project, got time on your hands? And I thought, oh, this is talking to me. And actually went to have a look at it, and that was the property I ended up renovating and turning into the first hospital.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, it was.
So it's like at times it's almost like printed publications present themselves when you needed, do you fancy being a nurse in the sun? And then there's a property that's shown up, or a friend that says, oh, you don't fancy coming along to. And we often, when you look back, you often find moments where it's like, oh, was that just fate? Was it luck? Was it, I don't know.
The universe provided.
The universe, yeah, absolutely.
I want something and it's been presented to me.
I'm a strong believer in that, I have to say. That is something I do believe in.
If you've not been looking at the paper on that particular day, in properties.
No, it's literally, we keep having these experiences. We need something, and then literally within 24 hours, like we're talking to somebody and they're like, but I do that. I'm like, what? Yeah. It's like yesterday is a guy we met that does apprenticeships, so we're looking to take on an apprentice, and it's like, whoa.
Yeah, I think if you really know what you want, that does come about. I think if you're ambivalent, you will never find it. But as soon as you know what it is you're looking for, the opportunities will come towards you.
It's amazing, isn't it?
And I think that's what's kept me, that belief is what's kept me going through my life as well.
Okay, so you find yourself with a property to renovate. Did you ever want to think, whoa, this is a lot?
Do you know, I didn't. I just went for it. We couldn't raise the initial the money for the deposit, so we approached the landlord of the landowner around the property, just to tell him out of courtesy really what it is we were thinking of doing. At the time didn't know who he was, but it transpired that he was interested in property, and he had offered to buy the property and lease it back. Believed in the project and what it is we could do, and that's how we got it off the ground really. Managed to get some other investors, a friend of mine, my father, and some other medical experts invested in it. So we created a company, shareholding, basically got it up and running from, I think we got the keys in the July and it was registered in the January. So we got a team in and planned it all and got it going.
That's like an SOS DIY project.
It is. It's like a Challenge Annika.
It did feel a bit like that just before the registration. Yeah. But yeah, it was really exciting. I really enjoyed that part of it, actually creating something, getting it going, and then But then the crunch point was, well, where are we going to get the patients from? You know, it was like, looking back, it wasn't done in a way that you would probably encourage someone to plan a business. So a lot of learning curves from it. But we were successful in getting patients from out of county, local. It was a bespoke service. It was small, and that was something I always believed in. I didn't really feel that it was something I wanted to grow and make into a big corporate enterprise. It was about doing something right and making it a really good service. So it started off very small with 6 beds, progressed on to 10 beds, added occupational therapy unit later on, and made a really nice kitchen and gym and workspace for the patients. I also converted a room in the garden into a therapy centre, and because I really feel like that's important to have holistic therapies alongside the traditional medical. So we've always had therapists doing touch therapy, massage, Reiki, reflexology, a really nice space for people. So don't take them to seclusion, take them to some calm therapy, you know. It worked.
Wow.
Yeah, it really helped just to take the stimulation, you know, out of someone who was really stressed.
And then, so how long did you do that?
So the lease was a 12-year lease. So it was basically, it's been running for 12 years. Over the last couple of years, as the lease was coming to an end, we had to make a decision on what to do. I wanted to buy the property. The landlord didn't want to sell. He's about accumulating his property for, you know, their business reasons. So the bank had offered us the opportunity to invest in that if that was going to be the way forward. Because it wasn't, I thought, well, now I know that that's available. Maybe I should look at some other buildings. You know, if I can do it the first time round, I can do another one a second time round, right? So again, ask the universe. And an amazing property came up about 6 miles up the road from where we were. It was an old nursing home. It was diabolical. It needed a lot of work done. But again, I could see its potential. So we put an offer in. I think there was 6 or 7 other people looking at it. Managed to get it and started the project on that. So I was running the main business and running the project to get that up and going as well. So that's then when I had my kind of critical point in life, if you like, and had to make a decision where I was going next, because running the main business, overseeing the project, and I was also going through a relationship split at the time, and I just felt like everything was crumbling in, and I was running on empty for a lot longer than I allowed myself to realise. But then I thought I wasn't in a great place, and I wasn't able to offer the support to my staff and my senior managers, and I just felt I wasn't in the best place to be taking the business forward. It's not that I didn't want to. I absolutely loved what I was doing, but I was really struggling to juggle all the plates, really. And it got to a point where I'd be opening my emails and not even being able to read the screen. A phone would ring and it would just fry my brain. I just didn't even want to pick it up. You know, if I did, I couldn't hear the words people were saying. I thought, my brain's shutting down. I was really, really in a bad way. And I think when you're helping people in that environment, you're so busy focused on your patients, your business and your staff. You don't look after yourself. And I overrode all the signs and symptoms because I was determined to finish the project. I couldn't just walk away from it. But in the end, I didn't have a choice. I went to the doctors, which I'd never ever felt like I wanted to do, but I did, and he signed me off for 2 weeks, and that was horrible because I'd never been off sick, and I basically never went back after that. He extended it, and I spoke to the board, and they put in place a new director to keep things going, and continued with the project, which absolutely devastated me because I wasn't part of finishing something that I created. But I knew then and that it was either there was a choice between my sanity or the project, and I had to walk away and let it go completely. So in April this year, which was about 10 months after I actually went off, I made the decision to sell my shares at the low price because of where the business was at. But it wasn't about money in the first place. So as long as I got a little bit of something to start again, I was happy. And also I felt that I couldn't be a shareholder but not be involved in the day-to-day running of the business. It was a very difficult place to be. So actually making that decision, once I had made the decision, was a big turnaround for me. I felt like I'd just dropped this huge weight off my shoulders and worked through the grieving process. There was a grieving process, and here I am, ready to pursue my new business.
So we're back in the northeast. So you've left Norwich.
Yes.
So was that... Did you then think about, do I want to stay in Norwich? Do I move somewhere else? Do I go to another country?
To me, that wasn't really a difficult option. I have a big family back in the north. I'd split it with my partner. I wasn't in the business anymore. So it just felt a safe and comfortable option, where I felt I needed to go to retreat and just recalibrate really and get myself back to where I needed to be.
No ties other than, I suppose, your mum was still...
Mum's still there, and
so
my two brothers, but yeah.
I guess moving to the northeast again it's not as bad as moving to Australia, is it?
No, well, that's what I did say to her. It's only a few hours up the road.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not the best part of 2 days on an aeroplane.
No. Yeah, it's not quite as sunny though, unfortunately.
Okay, so you've left that business behind. You've moved back up to the most wonderful place on planet Earth, in my opinion. And
absolutely.
And so, what is the plan? So you've been busy.
Yeah. So I suppose over the last 6 years, I've always been interested in coaching, and that was always something I wanted to develop. In the longer term, anyway, was to take a step back and work, with the business, but also to use my skills, knowledge and expertise to coach people, but never had the time and energy to do it. So now that I had the time back up north, I reinvested in some more coaching training and different things, and I've decided that I've got 20 years worth of experience in mental health. I've set up my own mental health hospital. I've been a director for 12 years, and I've gone through really chronic stress. So it was obvious to put all of that together to then go ahead and help other people using coaching. I also trained to be a hypnotherapist because I still have this huge intrigue in how the mind works and things like that. I will use it, but it was more about me enjoying the learning process as well.
So how are you now pulling that all together for your next project?
So it took a while because initially I didn't want anything more to do with mental health because I'd done it for so long, and also because of where I was at. So I would say for the last 5 months I've kind of procrastinated, not really knowing where I want to niche my skills. I could help people build 7-figure businesses. That's what I did, but I wasn't aligned with that. It didn't feel that was my purpose. And quite soon after I cut my ties with the business completely, everything made sense. And what I initially thought about doing, I've gone back to, and that is to pull together this. So the last couple of months I've kind of decided what I'm going to do, how I'm going to do it. I'm pulling together my website, but I'm also working on a model, which is called it's 6 steps from stress to success. Bit of a tongue tie, but and it's basically a process that I can take my clients through to work through stress and get them back on their feet to move forward and build their own new businesses. and it's currently being worked on and called the OptiMind model of convergence. So in the next few weeks, I hope to launch that with my website and start really going out there and getting some clients and working with them. I've got some clients now that I help on lots of different levels, but I really want to home in on using my experience and skills to help leaders and directors and people who, when they're at the top, there's not an awful lot of support there, or a lot of understanding about what they're actually going through. So I feel like that's the people that I want to be helping.
Yeah, it's common, isn't it, that there's not the there's not the support from an onboarding perspective or continued support, really, is it?
No,
it's
lonely.
There's an expectation that you know what you're doing and
That's
crack
it.
on.
Yeah.
If only people knew.
Yeah.
You know, and also in small to medium-sized businesses, a lot of the senior directors are the entrepreneurs. They're the people that have created the business, but it's not necessarily their skill, and that's where stress can really creep in, because it's not where their minds are naturally designed to go. They're not drivers, that they're there to create but not take it forward. And I think that's something I should have been able to reflect on a lot sooner. I'm a very creative person, and I'm very good at, you know, the operational side of stuff, but actually it wasn't fulfilling my needs.
No.
So I can see myself doing lots of creations as well as doing the coaching, and I have got a few ideas.
Excellent.
Yeah.
We talk about that a lot, actually. That's that founder syndrome. You built it, and then you think that you're the best person to take it forward. And quite often, you're good at building, you're good at starting.
Yeah.
But you're not necessarily the one that can, you know, keep it going or move it on to the next level or scale it or whatever. So it's that kind of, you know, how many founders that just need to let go and let somebody else
and that's
take
huge,
it over.
isn't it? It's like letting go of your baby, you know, and trusting somebody to actually do the right thing. But then when you realize that there are people, you know, over the years you hear people saying, in order to have a successful business, you should employ people better than yourself.
Oh god, yeah.
And I only heard that kind of later on rather than earlier on, and it's like, yeah, actually that would have been the right thing to do. And just accept what my skills are and what other people can bring to the business. And that's a huge thing that I think lots of entrepreneurs need to take on board. You need to be prepared to let go to build a business.
Because the reality is you can't be good at everything.
Nope,
And
nobody
you don't
is.
have the time to be good at everything.
That's it, yeah.
So if your plans are to grow, you've got to bring in the right appropriate skills and to build the right processes and with the right people in place.
That's it.
To grow an enterprise. So
Or you'll find yourself crumbling and stressing and questioning. You know, it's something I did myself, and I think a lot of people do, question their abilities, then they lose their confidence, and then the stress kicks in because they think they're not good enough, that they're letting the business down and all these different things. And then it's just this barrage of negativity and negative thoughts that start coming in about where am I, what am I doing, how am I doing it, you know. It's crazy, really, and it's so common, but people need to acknowledge that they are good at what they do, but just in different areas.
So what are they? Are you going to reveal your cunning plan for the future?
Well, I don't think I can sit still for too long.
No.
So ultimately what I'd like to do is retreats. For me, that's a much lighter way of helping people in a if you want to call it an institutional setting, but it's not really. So I want to do retreats for stressed leaders and directors and entrepreneurs and work through my 6 steps to success. And it's not something you can do overnight. So there's 2 ways that I'm going to be looking at doing it. One is to offer workshops to people locally over a period of months, but there are ways I can adapt it to do 1-week retreats, and hopefully that's going to be in sunny places and not rainy places.
then you can combine the two,
Yeah,
which you've always wanted.
absolutely.
Best of both worlds.
But I think it's also important for people that are going through that stress to actually get away from the rat race and the concrete buildings and all the rest of it, and actually be in an environment that's conducive to making the changes they need.
Yeah, you need to step out of. You can't be in the next conference room and fully switch off. And
you can't, and I don't think, you know, there's so many great people out there doing some great workshops. Don't get me wrong, and they've all got steps that can help people. But I'm a big believer, and that was one of the things when I created the hospital, that the environment was incredibly important for the patients, because if they're in a horrible rundown building, how does that help them in the therapeutic sense? It's not. It doesn't work. Environment's incredibly important.
Yeah, we talk about sick building syndrome a lot.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, you know, open plan offices are not the best place for people to actually concentrate and get work done. So it's like bonkers that most office buildings now are open plan.
Yeah.
Is people can't.
Yeah.
And then, you know, in America, the cubicle, they're like a cubicle, don't they? Which is just as bad because you're in an open plan, but you're also isolated. It's like crikey Moses. You know?
Yeah.
People can't work like this. You know,
well, it's like in school settings as well. The number of times you go from separate classrooms to, someone will have an idea of we should all be open plan schools, and it's like, no, it doesn't work, it's too noisy. Right, back to normal classrooms, let's get some partitions in. And I guess we've not seen that in the workplace, although we've got more. I see more and more offices with the sort of hot desking approach, and go and sit somewhere you feel like you're going to be productive. Sit in the lobby, sit in somewhere that's still within Wi-Fi range outside. It's good.
It's funny, we're territorial as well, so we like our desks as well, which is hilarious. So.
and also I think for different people, because everyone's got different personality types. Some people want to be isolated, but some people work better in mixed environments as well. So there's a lot to be said about understanding people and how they are the most productive.
Yeah,
definitely. And we keep talking about this whole sort of 9 to 5 Monday to Friday. That's not necessarily when we have the best use of our energy as well.
No, not at all.
You know.
No.
So I think the dream is, you know, you've read Tim Ferriss's 4-hour work week. Getting as close to that as possible.
Yeah. And morning times, I think a lot more people are productive early in the morning, you know, and after dinner everyone kind of just fritters away, don't they? It's
it's bonkers,
not,
isn't it?
Yeah. So doing retreats and getting people back on track is my ultimate aim. Yeah.
So when are you planning on? Have you got a date in the diary for those starting? Or are you not putting the pressure on yourself?
I'm not putting the pressure on myself just yet.
Good idea.
I want to get the.
When can we go?
I am going to start and find out what the interest is really, so I can start planning ahead, because I can put plans in place for later in the year and next year. But at the moment, I want to get the model established and running and see how people work with it, so that it is maybe do a few spa hotel retreats in England first and see how it goes. Yeah.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah, that's really cool. And it's in terms of the directors or senior leaders you work with, it can be not just those that are sort of founding businesses starting out. Is that also something for those in established businesses?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Yeah, anyone that's kind of feeling the pressure really and at a point in their life where they're thinking, is this what I want to do? Are they worried about leaving, and then they've got financial pressure because they've got to make the changes. And part of my process to help really get to the bottom of all of that and what the fears and anxieties are of making those changes, because actually once you do, it's not as bad as anticipating doing it. And also if I can help people earlier on, they won't get to the point where I was, where I actually had to leave something what I felt was premature, and actually work through the tension points so they can actually still continue to run successful businesses, but in a place that they're comfortable and at ease.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Cool. So if that's of interest to any of our listeners, what's the best sort of platform to get in touch with you?
Well, I have got a page on Facebook, which I will be opening a community for senior leaders. But at the moment, LinkedIn is a very good place to start. But I can take contacts through Messenger from the Facebook page that I'm on at the moment.
Okay.
Which is Lisa V, the Director Doctor.
Fantastic. We always like to finish, don't we, with you've done a lot of things, you've travelled, and you've come to now the point where you feel like you can pull everything together, have your love of helping people, be in the sun, see progression. So if we could take you back to the early days, you're sort of 16, 18, and we can sit you down in front of 16-year-old Lisa.
Gosh.
What do you think you would pass on as advice?
So one thing I would say is don't see anything as a negative or a failure and get wrapped up in the dark side of situations. See what you can learn from every situation that has an emotional impact and use it to make your life better. Because the more you focus on the negative, the more negative everything becomes. A big believer in how you think is how you are and what you create. So you've got to learn from your experiences. Don't just see life as like a learning place at school, and you make mistakes, learn from them. Don't allow it to absorb into emotional states and pull you down. You can't change yesterday, but you can use your experiences to create tomorrow. Live life to the max and make the most of every opportunity. Most importantly, this is a little quote I wrote to myself years ago, but if you feel like you're walking against the wind, stop, reflect and turn the other way. Listen to the whispers in your heart. It's a key to your soul and it will always guide you. And one of the key things is believe in yourself and do what makes you happy, not what makes you angry or upset or dissatisfied.
That's some powerful advice for not just 16-year-old Lisa, but for us all.
Yes,
Yeah.
I was almost whooping there. It's like, yes, that's.
Yeah.
No, it's brilliant.
It's critical to learn from negative experiences or perceived negative experiences, but actually some negative experiences can be actually the best things that happen once you get around the other side of them.
Yeah, we find that a lot with our guests, actually. Totally. Well, thank you ever so much for coming in and speaking to us.
Thank you very much.
Good luck with the launch.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lisa.
Thanks everyone for listening. Check out all the show notes at inspirationnorth.com. Join us again for the next episode when we'll be chatting to another inspirational person. If you like this, subscribe and tell your friends. If you didn't like this, subscribe anyway.
And tell everybody.